Welcome to Highline Excel 2013 class video number 40. Hey, if you want to download this workbook for week 8, click on the link below the video or go to our class website. Wow, we got to talk about the amazing conditional formatting. We are going to do basics all the way to advanced, and there's 50 examples. Now here's our topic list, and this is huge. If you click on the Show More button below the video, this table of contents is there with time hyperlinks. And you can click on any topic, the time hyperlink, and it will take you to that part of the video. Hey, if you want to learn basic to advanced, watch this from beginning to end. Now, there's two basic types of conditional formatting. Built-in conditional formatting, which was amazingly enhanced since Excel 2007. And then there's logical formulas. That's the real power of conditional formatting. So we have lots of examples of both. Now let's go over to the sheet CF15 and talk about what they both have in common. Conditional formatting comes down to this. Some logical test that comes out true or false. True means the cell gets the formatting. False, the cell does not get the formatting. So if we're testing whether the cells contain a number greater than 1,000, we actually have to look at every single cell and ask a question. Are you greater than 1,000? True, so we add the formatting. Are you greater than 1,000? False, so we don't add the formatting. Are you greater than 1,000? False. Are you greater than 1,000? True, so we add the formatting. Every single cell that you want to add conditional formatting to has to get that same true, false logical question. True, we get the formatting. False, we don't get the formatting. Control Z, Z. All right, so let's try this. I'm going to highlight this whole column of net sales and then home styles conditional formatting. Now there's a bunch of built-in options. Highlight cell rules, different comparative operators, greater than, less than, between. We can do text, we can do dates, we can do duplicates. Top and bottom rules, data bars, color scales, icons. We'll look at all of these. All right, let's do greater than. And for this one, I'm simply going to type in 1,000 and accept the default. Click OK. And so now if I change this to 1,000.01, it becomes greater than 1,000, so the conditional formatting shows up. Control Z. If I change this to 1, instantly the conditional formatting is not applied because that comes out false. Control Z. How about contains? I want to highlight all of the text items that contain fun. Home, styles, conditional formatting, highlight cell rules. Each one of the cells we're going to ask a question. Text that contains what? Fun. Now notice I'm typing this in for both of these examples here. That collapse button for our text box means you can link it to the cells. And usually you want to link it to the cells because then the criteria is not hidden in this dialog box. All right, I'm not going to accept the default. I'm going to go to custom format. Fill, border, font, number. You can go wild. Pretty much every time I'm just going to click yellow. But any formatting you select, you can pile it up and it will be applied. Click OK. So now we have text that contains fun. If I change this to fun, instantly it updates. Control Z. Now most of the time we want to link it to the cells. Highlight cell rules greater than, and that collapse button is great because now I can link it to the cell. I'm not going to accept the default. If we want to do the contains, conditional formatting contains, and I'm going to link it to that cell. All right, so now I can change it. Now I can change it to quad. Notice contains means either the whatever. So you're putting something here, and this cell can contain it, either partial or in full. If I change this to 2,000, instantly the conditional formatting updates. So that's beautiful that we can link it to the cell. Control Z, Z. All right, let's go over to our next sheet, CF 6 and 7. How about top 3? So I want to see the top 3 with conditional formatting. We use our top bottom rules, top 10 items. And I'm going to just boop, boop, boop. Notice this one is not linked. I don't see that collapse button. All right, and then we select whatever formatting we want, instantly the top three, and that's dynamic, of course. Above average, this is a great one. You got to be kidding. It'll calculate the average. So above average, I'll just accept the default there. And instantly, only the numbers that are above average get that conditional formatting. Let's go over to CF 8 to 11. We're still talking about built-in features, data bars. We'll rank the number with length of the bar. So I have these grades highlighted. Conditional formatting data bars. There's some sort of translucent ones at the top and then solid colors. I'm going to select this one. That is beautiful. Now, sometimes you don't want to see the numbers in bars together. No problem. We'll do what's called a cell chart. I'm going to highlight the range equals one cell to my left, Control Enter to populate those. Then I'll go up and apply my data bars. And now I need to edit this. And so we need to learn about conditional formatting, manage rules. Not only can you edit, you can add, you can move them up and down if you have multiple rules. All right, so I'm going to say manage. Here's our manage window, new rule, edit rule, delete. And you can have multiple rules and apply conditional formatting on top of each other. We want to edit this. And so right here, show bar only. We do not want to see the numbers. We just want the bar. Check. Click OK. Click OK. That is so cool. Here's another cool trick, right? Control-C, Control-V. Just to have a little fun, like Christmas lights flashing on and off. I'm going to highlight those numbers equals the RANDBETWEEN function. And do something like 0 up to 100. So I'm going to randomly select numbers from 0 to 100. And the RANDBETWEEN is volatile. Control Enter. That means when you F9, it recalculates. And look at that. We get a bunch of singing bars up and down, up and down. That's pretty cool. Hey, let's go over to the sheet CF 12 to 13. Color scales. It actually ranks the color by number and sort of divides it into either 3 or 4 parts. Let's go up to conditional formatting, color scales, and I'm going to select this first one. Now, there's sort of 4 sections. Red is the bottom, then orange, then yellow, then green. So the darkest green is the biggest number. And then the next darkest green, and then it's sort of this yellow-green, which transmutes into yellow, lighter yellow. So color scales. The only good thing, I've never used color scales very much. The only good thing I can think of color scales for is the old RANDBETWEEN trick. Oh, actually, I'm going to do equals rand. Not even a close parentheses. This is an argumentless function. Control Enter. F9, it creates a number between 1 and 0 with 15 digits. So now I'll go up in data bar, no, color scales. Zoop. And so now if I hit the F9 key, it's kind of like Christmas. Not only that, you can pile up whatever you want. Icons is coming next. You could just pile up some icons. I'm going to pick that one right there. And so now if you hit F9, oh, that is wild. We'll pile it up. Let's do some data bars, too, all on top. This is just silly right here. Look at that. F9, and it's kind of like your Christmas tree. You can actually go one step even further. My 7-year-old loves to do this. After doing rand and conditional formatting, he goes up to charts, more charts, and then actually all charts. And the bubble chart is under XY scatter. It used to be its own category here. And I'm going to select these 3D bubbles here. That one will be fine. Click OK. And so now not only do you get, I'm going to control and roll. This is totally silly. I'm going to delete all the elements here. And then F9. Look at that. Is that a wild little Excel animation trick? All right, enough of the silliness. Let's go over to CF 14 to 15. We want to look at icons. Sometimes you have grades or stock values or stock changes up and down, and we want to add an icon like an arrow. Now, there's a bunch of silly icons like these cell phone strength and quarter moons, but I'm going to try the arrows. Just flat out 3 categories. Green is the highest, then yellow, then red. And that's pretty cool. Not only that, we can put it next to the cells. Here are some grades. They could be grades or stocked or daily sales or whatever, and you want to rank them. Green would be the best. Yellow's in the middle. The red ones are probably not so good. So I'm going to do that same trick. Icons. And then we want to learn the keyboard. We learned that we can go to Manage Rules. But once you start doing this a lot, we want to learn that the keyboard is Alt-O-D. Now we want to edit. And we want to say Show Icon Only. And notice here's where the percentages are listed. And check this out. You can do number, percent, even a formula or a percentile. I'm going to keep it as a percent and click OK. So you have some power with these arrows here. Click OK. Oh, that is totally cool. All right. Built-in conditional formatting, a bunch of cool things. But the real power is going to come with formulas. I'm going to go over to CF16. Now, logical formulas. We've done a bunch in this class. Any formula that comes out to true or false, you can use in the conditional formatting dialog box. True gets the formatting. False doesn't get the formatting. Not only that, but array formulas work in conditional formatting dialog box. Our last example will show an example of that. Errors are ignored. So later when we use the match function for either or criteria or to check whether 2 lists are the same or different, we'll get NA errors, and they are ignored. They're treated as false. Any non-zero number, later we'll use the match, and we'll get lots of different numbers. Only 0 is treated as false. Any non-zero number, positive or negative, is true. By the way, that's exactly the same for the if function. Any non-zero number is true. 0 is false. That means get formatting is either true or any non-zero number. Not get formatting is either false or 0 or an error. Now let's look at a bunch of examples. We're going to start simple and get more complex. Go over to CF17. Let's start off by trying to format numbers less than 0. And we'll start off with built-in features, and then we'll go to formulas. I'm simply going to highlight these. These are our stocks. Here's our profit, and we want to highlight red for the numbers less than 0. Conditional formatting, highlight cell rules, less than. We could just type in 0, and usually this is perfectly OK because losses are less than 0 by definition, so that's probably not going to change. And then you could format it however you want. We could also highlight, go up to conditional formatting, highlight cell rules, less than, and link it. And that might be nice because maybe your hurdle is 500. And so now we have highlighted in red all the ones we're not interested in. Control Z. But we can also just build a formula. But here's the deal. Each one of these cells still needs a true-false formula. Now, we're going to build our formula off to the side, copy and paste it, and then highlight, open up the dialog box, and there's a place in the dialog box to paste your formula. The key is make sure when you build it off to the side that the range you're building in is the same size over here. Then we'll build our formula, see if the patterns of trues and falses are working, and then we'll copy and paste it. There's actually a couple advantages to building your formula off to the side before putting it in the dialog box. The first is it's easier to build formulas in cells than in dialog boxes. The second thing is the dialog box, as you will see, is very small. All right, here we go. In the top cell here, I'm going to say equal, and I'm trying to build a logical formula that tells me true or false when the number in the cell is less than 0. So I click relative cell reference. Are you less than? I'm going to click on this 0 and F4. That is a comparative operator. Anytime you have a comparative operator, you get a logical formula that spits out true or false. Control Enter and copy it down. So we could see our patterns of trues and falses. If I change this to 500, working good. Control Z. Now notice something. We copied this formula down this column here. Now we want to copy the very top formula in edit mode, Control C. And then we want to highlight this range. Now this range is going to need each one of these formulas. Now these are going to have nothing to do with it. But we're going to paste that formula into the dialog box. And in memory, it will copy it down as if it was in the cell and tell each cell either true or false. Now with the range highlighted, and it's very important. Notice the active cell. If I highlighted it in reverse, this would not work. Why? Because that active cell has to be parallel to the cell we copied the formula from. All right, so I've highlighted it. I go up to Conditional Formatting, New Rule. And down at the bottom, it says Use Formula to determine which cells to format. And then in this text box, Format Values where this formula is true. I click and Control V. Remember I mentioned it's small. It's pretty small in this dialog box. Now let's add some formatting. So whatever the formatting is. Now this formula will be copied down in memory into each one of the cells. Now it's not going to actually be in the cells because those values are in the cells. But the dialog box will do its deed and deliver a true or false to each cell. When I click OK, instantly the conditional formatting based on our formula is working. If I change this to 16,000, instantly our conditional formatting is working. Control Z. Now these formulas over here are not connected in any way. We can highlight them and clear them, Alt EAA. The formula we copied from here and pasted in the dialog box is in the dialog box. Now I'm going to Control Z and leave that there. These are not determining the conditional formatting. They're just for us as we're learning or as we're building our formulas. All right, let's go look at some great examples on 18 to 21. Here we have budgeted and actual. And we just like to format the actuals that are bigger than the budgeted amounts. All right, so we highlight. And let's do built-in first. Conditional formatting, highlight rules, and we can do greater than. Now notice in this situation, I highlighted, and the active cell is right there. Well, I'm going to tell this text box to look one cell to my left. Now notice something. The default for cell references when you start clicking is absolute. So if I want it relative, I have to hit the F4 key 1, 2, 3 times. All right? Now, format cells that are greater than, and that's a relative cell reference. In memory, it will be copied down, and a true or false will be delivered to each cell. Click OK. That is beautiful. So instantly we can see the actuals that are bigger than the budgeted amounts. Now let's come down here. I wasn't supposed to have this formula right here. Let's do it with formulas. Now, when you can do it with the built-in ones, that's fine. Oftentimes, though, you have complex criteria, or later we'll see that we want the whole row. We're going to do this example later where you want to highlight the whole row when actual is bigger than budget. Well, there's no built-in feature for that. All right, so let's see if we can do this one with a formula. Hey, this one's easy. Equals relative cell reference. Are you greater than another relative cell reference? Control Enter. Copy it down. Notice our patterns of trues and falses. It looks like the formula is working. We've highlighted off to the side a range that's exactly the same size as where we want our conditional formatting. I'm going to go to the active cell at the top, copy it in edit mode, Control C, escape, highlight. And now we want to learn the keyboard to open up conditional formatting, new rule, Alt-HLN. Arrow all the way down to use formula, and tab. Control V. And now we can format with whatever formatting you want. Click OK. Click OK. That is beautiful. in memory, that formula got copied down. Each cell got a true or false. Trues get the formatting, false do not. Now here's the beautiful thing about a budget, right? Here's our template we've built. Next month, I simply highlight, delete, and then come and type my new values in. That conditional formatting will totally remain. So as I go down the column, oh, we're all over budget. This is terrible. Oh, that one's under budget. And then the point is, we can clearly see that conditional formatting, even though we clear the content, the conditional formatting is still there. Now I'm going to Control Z a bunch. All right, now let's go look at another example of formulas on 2223. Now here we want to highlight net sales, but only net sales that occurred on 1/5. Now here's the deal. Each one of these cells needs a true-false formula. But the true-false formula will just be looking at a relative cell reference, the date for this transaction. So I'm not even going to build this off to the side. I'm going to go straight up to the keyboard, Alt-HLN, arrow, 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 tab. Now let's see if we can build this formula. It's got to be built from the point of view of that cell. So I'm going to click whoop on the date for this record. F4 3 times to make it relative. Are you equal to? And then I click on A4. So that one comes absolute, which is what we want, and then format. And so instantly we have formatted only the sales numbers where the date is 1/5. Now, the cool thing about conditional formatting, we saw just a second ago, we can delete everything. We can also sort the column. So right-click Sort, biggest ones on top. And instantly, all the numbers, every single cell, still looking at a relative cell reference, the date in this transaction. All right, let's go look at another example on CF24. Same thing, but we want to do invoice. Alt-HLN, arrow, 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 tab, invoice. And I got to make it relative with F4 key 3 times. Are you equal to the invoice absolute? Add some formatting. Totally beautiful. Let's go over and we want to see this invoice and the date example we just did. But now we want to highlight the entire row. So we're going to go over to CF25. Now, here's the deal. If this entire row is going to be asked the question, is the date in this row equal to 1/5, our criteria date, then every single cell in this row has to look at the date. But remember, this is a formula, and we're going to build it off to the side. It's got to copy over and down. Well, if this whole row is looking at this date, well, this row needs to look at the date in this row or this record. That means we need a mixed cell reference. So you ready? We'll build the formula in the cells. Once we see our patterns of trues and falses are working, we'll copy and paste it into the dialog box. All right, so ready? In H6, I'm going to say equals the date. F4, 1, 2, 3 times, lock the B, the column, but not the row. Remember, as we copy it this way, every single cell in this for this record needs to look at that date. But the 7 is not locked, so when we move it down, boom, it'll move to the next date in the next record. Are you equal to A4? And now I need to use the F4 key because I'm in the cells. That formula will work all the way across and down. Now, the trick to highlighting rows with criteria with conditional formatting is always going to be mixed cell references. Control-Enter, copy it over, and copy it down. Now, we're going to see if our patterns of trues and falses are working. And sure enough, they are. Look at that. Every single cell in this row or for this record is locked on that date. Locked on that date. Locked on that date. But watch, this formula, when I go down, boom, it moves to the next date. Mixed cell references to conditionally format a row. All right, upper left cell, we put it in edit mode. That's our true-false formula. Copy in edit mode. Highlight. Control Shift right arrow, down arrow. Now this active cell is totally important. If it happened to be over here and you pasted the formula from this cell in the dialog box, it wouldn't work. So you have to make sure that the upper left, if you copy it from here, it's got to be there. If you copied it from here, then no problem. Then the active cell would have to be right there. I copied it from H7, so this A7 is the active cell. Alt-HLN, arrow, 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 tab, Control V. There's our formula. Here's our formatting. Click OK. That is totally beautiful. And again, if we sort this on whichever column, right-click, smallest on the top, instantly the whole row for all the transactions on 1-5 are highlighted. And what's so nice about conditional formatting is that we can do stuff to this data set. It certainly is nice to be able to sort and be able to visualize our transactions on 1-5. That's what conditional formatting can do so well, help visualize the data. Now let's go to our next sheet, CF26. Let's do the same thing. Notice I've already highlighted. The active cell is right there. And I want to highlight each row or record based on this invoice number. Alt-HLN, arrow, 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 tab. Let's drag this down here. And I have to build a formula from the point of view of that invoice number and that cell. So I'm going to click on that A7, hit the F4 key 2 times. The column A is locked, but not the row. That means as it copies over in memory, everything in this row gets A7, but when it copies down, it'll look at invoice number in A8. Are you equal to A4? And that's locked absolutely. Format, whatever formatting you want, click OK, click OK. That is beautiful. And if I sort it, right-click Sort. Totally perfect. If I come over and change the invoice, instantly when I hit Enter, the conditional formatting is applied to the row for that particular invoice. That is amazing, a great way to visualize. Now let's go over to CF27. We want to see our next example. Hey, this is our budget example, but we want the whole row, including the expense name. So over here, I'm going to build my formula in the cells. Remember, we're comparing. Is actual bigger than budgeted? But each cell, in order to get a yellow formatting for the row, has to have a true. So each one of these cells will have to compare actual to budgeted. So in the active cell equals actual, F4 3 times, lock the column but not the row. Are you greater than budgeted? F4 3 times to lock the column but not the row. Now remember, that formula in the active cell will be in the conditional formatting dialog box related to that cell. When we copy it over to, it will end up in the budgeted amount and actual amount. I'm going to Control Enter to populate the formula into the highlighted cells. Control Enter. It looks like our patterns of trues and falses are working. If I go to the last cell and check it, that is beautiful. Each cell in the row are still looking at actual and budget. Now I'm going to copy the upper left formula in edit mode, Control C, highlight, Alt-HLN, arrow, 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 tab, Control V. Format it however you want, click OK. That is absolutely beautiful. And this is dynamic. If we change it to some number bigger, instantly we have tagged that line with formatting. Cost of goods sold at an actual number greater than budget. Control Z. Now let's go to our next sheet, CF28. And here we want to not highlight the whole row, but the whole column. Hey, row or column, conditional formatting, you're going to use mixed cell references. All right, I'm just going to highlight the whole range here. There's the active cell, Alt-HLN, arrow, 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 tab. And now let's build the formula in the dialog box. Remember, the formula here has to relate to that cell, the active cell. So I'm going to ask, is the column header, and each cell in this column has to look at that column header. So that means the 5 has to be locked. I'm going to hit F4 one time. But the A is not locked because in memory, this dialog box will copy the formula over, and then January needs to move to February. Are you equal to whatever's in B3? And I'm going to add some formatting. Click OK. That is beautiful. If I select the drop down and select January, boom, January is yellow. May is yellow. That's highlighting or adding formatting conditionally to the whole column. Now later in this video, we'll see how to do the row and the column to get an intersecting value. All right, let's go over to CF29. Here we want to talk about OR. We have talked about single criteria. So back here, single invoice number on 26. But now sometimes you want to say one or the other. Now there's two ways to do OR criteria. We can either use the OR function, or probably more efficiently, it's best to use the match function, especially when you have lots of OR criteria. We're going to start by looking at OR. And I want to do it just to the sales here. Equals OR the invoice number. And this is just, we're just going to highlight just the net sales. So it's a relative cell reference. Are you equal to the first one, F4? That's the first logical test. Comes out true or false, comma. The second logical test, got to look at the same exact invoice number again, but this time ask the question, are you equal to the second invoice number in our criteria area? F4 to lock it. True in the logical 2 or true in the logical 1, either one will trigger the OR to dump an OR into the cell. Control Enter, copy it down. And so now we have our pattern of trues and falses. It looks like it's working. If I change this, so it looks like we have true for the 42 and true for the 40. If I were to change this to 45, instantly we can see our patterns of trues and falses are working just fine. Control Z. Now I'm going to copy the cell. In edit mode, the topmost cell, Control C, escape. Control Shift down arrow, Alt HLN, arrow, 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 tab, Control V, and then format it however you want. And just like that, we have applied OR criteria to deliver a conditional formatting. If I change this to 5, instantly the new invoice row sales number is conditionally formatted yellow. Control Z. Now we use the OR here. We want to look at the match. So we'll go up to CF30. We've talked about the match function oftentimes in this class. It's used for looking to see whether something is in a list or not. Now what I really want to do is ask the question, is this invoice in this list? Now this kind of seems silly. It's just 2, right? But match will look this up within this list. If it finds a match, meaning it finds the actual invoice number, it'll deliver the position. In this case, it'll be 1 or 2. If it doesn't, it will show an NA. So for 2 OR criteria, you know the OR is quick and easy. But if you have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which we will later in an example, then you definitely want to use the match. All right, so the match needs a lookup. It's looking up that invoice number within this list. And I need to lock this with the F4, comma 0, because it may not be sorted. And that's it. Control Enter, copy it down. Now we mentioned at the beginning of the section about formulas and conditional formatting. What triggers a true to apply the formatting? Either true or any non-zero number. The NA, which is an error, will be completely ignored. So what triggers the formatting to not be applied? False, 0, or an error. So this formula will work just fine. When it sees 1 or 2, boom, the formatting will be applied. I'm going to copy this from the top cell in edit mode, Control C, escape, highlight the whole net sales, Control Shift down arrow, Alt HLN, arrow, 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 Tab, Control V. Format. I keep doing yellow. I know that's boring, but you can do whatever formatting you'd like. Click OK. And just like that, if I change this to 5, boom, the conditional formatting changes. Control Z. Now, let's see how to do this with lots of invoice numbers, and we want to do it for the whole row. All right, so in the active cell, I'm going to build my formula equals match. And this time, we need to look up this invoice, but it's not a relative cell reference. Every single cell for this record in this row needs to look at the invoice number. But when we copy the formula down, it needs to move to the next, and then the next, and then the next invoice number. So what do? F4, 1, 2, 3 times. Column reference locked, row reference not. Comma, looking it up where? Oh, I like this much better, because think about how we would have done this with the OR. We would have had to compare this to this, comma, this to this. We would have had to build 5 individual logical tests. Here, I just highlight the whole range as the lookup array argument, F4, comma 0, because they may not be sorted. Control Enter, copy it across, and then down. And so now we should get the relative position of the item in each row. So nothing but ones. Remember, any non-zero number is a true. Look at that. Even these ones down here. Wow, that is beautiful. We do not need to use is number here, because conditional formatting interprets that arrow as false and any non-zero number as true. Control C, the upper left formula. Highlight just the data. Control Shift right arrow, down arrow. Alt HLN, arrow, 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 Tab, Control V. And then format it however you'd like. That is amazing. If I change this one to 41, instantly 41. If I Control Z, conditional formatting is applied. Not only that, but what's great about this method is we have highlighted this whole range. I can delete any one of these, and it will work perfectly. So Control Z. One thing you might want to consider is designating your criteria area with a few rows below. So you can just come here and type whichever ones you want, and boom, the match function will conditionally format based on OR criteria. Now, that's a few examples of OR criteria. Let's go to CF32 and look at AND criteria. So net sales column, we just want to conditionally format the numbers that represent a sale that was made between the lower and the upper date. Now, we're going to do this in the dialog box. Control Shift down arrow, Alt HLN, arrow, 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 Tab. Now let's build our formula right in the dialog box. Each one of these cells has to contain a formula with 2 logical tests, and they both have to come out true. Well, we're going to use the AND function here. Each one of the logical tests will have to look at the date and see if it's between these two. All right, you ready? Equals and open parentheses. I'm going to ask the question, is the date for this record? Ooh, it came out absolute. And because we're just doing the column, we want it relative. So I'll hit F4 a bunch of times. Are you greater than or equal to the lower date? F4 is fine. Comma. Now notice the screen tip doesn't come up when you build the formula in the dialog box. So you have to be fluent with your function if you're building it in this dialog box. The logical to argument comes next. I say, hey, is the date less than or equal to the upper date? And that will work. Close parentheses, and we'll do some formatting. Click OK. It looks like they were all sold for this period. I have no idea what's going on. I'm going to Alt-O-D to get back to Rules Manager, double-click or Alt-E. So it looks like I forgot to make relative. So I'm going to click here and hit F4, F4, F4. Now both are relative. When I click OK, boom. Just the sales that were between the upper and lower date are conditionally formatted. If I, instead of 5, put 3, instantly the conditional formatting is applied. Control Z. Now let's do that same test for between two dates, but for the whole row. Click in the upper left corner, Control Shift right arrow, Control Shift down arrow, Alt HLN, arrow, 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 tab. Ooh, now we're going to have to build the formula with mixed cell references equals and open parentheses. Hey, I'm looking at this date, and I want only the column locked, so F4 twice. The column B is locked, but not the 7. Are you greater than or equal to the lower date, locked in all directions? Comma to get to logical test 2. Date from this record, locked on the B only, but not the 7. Are you less than or equal to the upper date? Locked in all directions, close parentheses. Let's see if I make sure this time. Looking good. Click Format, add some formatting. Click OK, click OK. That is amazing. So now I can simply come up here and define an upper and a lower, and instantly the transactions for that period are conditionally formatted. Control Z. Now let's go over and look at more AND criteria on CF34. Here, the AND criteria are going to come from different columns. Now, we've done this many times before. We've done this with pivot tables and formulas, SUMIFs, COUNTIFs, D functions. But here, we're going to use the AND function and ask, is the product quad and are net sales greater than 3,000? All right, I'm going to click in the top left cell, Control Shift right arrow, down arrow, Alt HLN, arrow, 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 tab. Equals and the quad, the product. And that has to have the D locked, but not the 7. Are you equal to quad, locked in all directions? Comma are the sales. F4, F4 to lock the E, but not the 7. Are you greater than 3,000? Now, right off the bat, I can already see a problem. That's not going to work because I have the greater than symbol there, and I do not want that. So no problem. Excel's beautiful that way. You build your formulas. I can change the inputs later. Close parentheses, and then format it with whatever formatting you'd like. Click OK, click OK. Nothing. But now when I backspace and get rid of that comparative operator, instantly quad, where the sales were greater than 3,000, are conditionally formatted. Now let's change the criteria. FunFly. So FunFly greater than 3,000, there are none. How about greater than 250? And there's probably a few. The TriFly is an inexpensive boomerang, only a couple bucks each. So if I said 100, 3 transactions. Control Z, Z, Z. All right, let's go look at our next example on CF35. Now, in this example, we want to look at and or criteria together. So we want product quad or FastFly, where the sales are greater than 2,000. Now, I'm going to change this to 250. Because we know that that greater than symbol is not going to work. Now we're going to have to use the and or function together. Now we did this earlier in the class, mixing and or, when we did accounts receivable, accounts payable, credit analysis. Equals and I'll do the net sales calculation first. Every cell in this row needs to look at that sale, so I lock the column and not the row. Are you greater than the sales in F4? Now, comma. Now we put either the or the match function here. And I'm actually going to do the match. And we are going to run in trouble with the match, but we will see a way to fix that. Hey, that's going to be locked with the column, so F4 3 times. And I'm going to look that up within the lookup array. F4 to lock it, comma 0, because the list is not sorted. Now, the one problem with match here is match gives us NA, or a number. And the AND function is not as polite as the conditional formatting dialog box, which had no problem with the errors. So I'm going to close this off. Control Enter. We'll copy it over and down. And you'll see that the NA, the AND function, won't be able to handle the NA. So I would use the or here if it's 2, but you know what? I'm going to show you the more robust method, because if you have lots of or, then it's no problem. What do? We go is number. So when you're using the match inside of the and to do or criteria, got to put it in is number, because is number will say true when it's a number. Anything else will be false. All right, so that formula will work. Control-Enter, copy it over, and then double-click and send it down. Now, the upper left corner, copy, Control-C, escape, Control-Shift-right down, Alt-HLN, arrow, 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 tab, Control-V, and then do some formatting. So this is mixing and or. Wow, that is cool. $250 or more. We got the quad or the fast fly. Now let's scroll over, and we want to see some more conditional formatting for rows. I'm going to go over to CF36. Now here I just want to do above average. And I've already calculated the average in the cell there so I could visually see. Now I'm going to do this one over here. Equals are the sales, F4 to lock the column but not the row. Are you greater than or equal to the average? The average has to be for this whole column, F4, and locked in all directions. All right, Control-Enter, copy it over and down. Now, if you can have the average off to the side in a cell, that's like right here. Then you can just refer to it in your conditional formatting formula. We wouldn't use this. We'd just go cell B4 and lock it. If you're not allowed to have it in the cell, then certainly this way will work. The only downside to this is that you have to recalculate the average in every single cell. All right, I'm going to copy this in edit mode, escape, Control-Shift-right down arrow, Alt-HLN, arrow, 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 tab, Control-V, and then some formatting. Aha, so the whole row gets it when it's above average. That's pretty cool. Now let's go over to CF37. And here's a wild one. What would you do if you wanted every other row to be like green, like the old accounting paper templates? Every other row would have a formatting. Now you could do this manually. You can even write a macro to do it, but I don't know how to write a macro. No problem. We can do it with conditional formatting. We first want to remind ourselves of our number incrementer, meaning a formula element that will give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as we copy down. So rows. I'm sitting in A4, so I'm going to do a $4 colon A4. Now what's going on here is we've locked the 4, but not the 4 here. So as we go down, that 4 will turn to 5, 6, 7. Rows tells you how many rows there are in a range of cells. Right now it's 1. This whole row will get 1. And watch this. We can see 1 in every single cell. But now when I copy this down, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and the whole row will get it. Look at that. Now, remember we need some trigger, true, false, or 1, 0, or some non-zero number. Well, what if we took every single one of these numbers and divided it by 2 and looked at the remainder? Well, 1 divided by 2, the remainder is 1. 2 divided by 2, remainder is 0. 3 divided by 2 is 1 with a remainder 1. So by dividing every single one of these numbers by 2 and getting the remainder, it's going to give us 1, 0, 1, 0. Every single even number will get a 0. Every single odd number will get a 1. So with the active cell at the top, F2, and we've seen this a few times, the mod function, M-O-D, is the function where you give it a number. You tell it what you want to divide it by, meaning that's the denominator, and it will give you the remainder. Control-Enter to populate that formula into all the cells. That is amazing. That is a pattern of ones and zeros that we can use for conditional formatting. Now I'm going to hit F2, copy this in edit mode, Control-C, escape, delete, because I don't want them in the cells. Alt-HLN, a bunch of arrows, tab, Control-V. And then we could do some formatting. We'll make our old accounting templates. Before Excel, you'd go to the store and buy your green and white accounting template papers, and it would look something like that. That is absolutely amazing. Now, one thing about conditional formatting we haven't looked at, if you copy a cell, Control-C, and paste it somewhere, copy copies everything. It copies the conditional formatting. If there was data validation, it would copy it, the number, the formula, whatever. So actually, you can do this on a couple rows, or if you needed to extend it further, you just drag it. Now, there's no content in the cell, but the conditional formatting is being applied as we copy it down. That's pretty cool, using the mod function to conditionally format every other row. Let's go over to CF38. And here we want to look at a great example. I've been using this example for 15 years in my checkbook. I've been keeping my checkbook at least that long in Excel, longer than that probably. And I reconcile often, more than one time a month. I just want to put an X in this column and have the whole row turn yellow. So when I come back next week or next month to reconcile, all of the rows that don't have yellow will visually tell me that I still need to reconcile that. All right, so I'm going to highlight. Not the balance column, just the whole template. Right? And this is very simple. We ask the question for each row, is there an X in the E column? Alt-HLN, arrow, 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 tab. All right, so you ready? Boop. The X column, and I'm going to hit F or 1, 2, lock the E, but not the 6. Are you equal to, in double quotes, X? And that's it. Click Format. Click yellow, click OK, and instantly, if I take these X's away, not reconcile, Control-Z. When I come back and finally get this check number cleared, I can put an X. I love doing checkbooks with conditional formatting for reconciling. I'm going to Control-Z. Now let's go over to CF39. Now we would like to highlight or conditionally format the whole row, but only when the number is in the top 3. Now, I've done the large function over here. The large function says, go get the third largest. If I give the large function a 1, it goes and gets the max. If I give it a 2, it gets the second biggest. 3 is the third biggest. So I'm going to highlight this whole table. Active cell is up in the corner. Alt-HLN. Arrow, 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 tab, and I want to build my formula. Now, I'm going to refer to this. I'm going to assume that I have this in the cell. If you didn't, we'd do just like we did a second ago with average. We'd put the large in here. But I'm just going to say this number right here, and the whole row needs it. F4, F4, lock the column but not the row. Are you greater than or equal to the third biggest? Click some formatting. Click OK, and just like that, if I say give me only the 2 biggest, instantly there's the 2 biggest numbers. 3, well, it gives me 4 because there's a tie for third. So highlighting the whole row when we want to look at the 3 or some n value biggest numbers. All right, let's go over to CF40. And now we'd like to highlight. For each row, I want a separate conditional formatting. I want to say conditionally format the smallest number. And then when I go down to the next row, conditionally format the smallest number. I want a visual indication that this number right here is the smallest. Now, actually, this formula we did back when we studied lookup. This formula is looking up the supplier's name for the lowest value. Now, notice we use the min here. So the match function looked up the min, which in this case was 3264. It found the relative position using match, right, which would be 1, 2. And then the index went up and got the word Bay Area because it was the second occurrence in this list here. So we want to use a lookup formula, but then I want to visually see the smallest number with conditional formatting. All right, I'm going to highlight active cell at the top, Alt-HLN, a bunch of arrows, tab, equals min. And watch this. Since we need to reevaluate the minimum of value each time we copy the formula down, I'm going to lock the whole range only on the column F4, F4. See, the A and the E are locked. So each cell in this first row will be looking at A5 to E5. But as soon as it gets copied down to the next row, the 5s will turn to 6s. Now that'll determine the min value for each row. So each one of these cells would have the min. Now I need to say, are you equal to relative cell reference? 1, 2, 3. So this min will pick out the min and compare each one of the numbers in each row. As soon as it gets a true, it will apply the formatting. I'm going to click Format. Click some formatting, click OK, click OK. That is amazing. Now this one is kind of hard. Probably we should look at it over here. Just equals min in the active cell. And watch this. If we lock just the column references, F4 3 times, and Control-Enter to populate that formula, you could see it delivers just the min for the row, but into every single cell. Now I ask the question, F2 to put it in edit mode, are you equal to relative cell reference? Control-Enter to populate that formula. And only the one minimum value in each row will get a true. So right here, boom. All right, let's go over and look at our next example, CF41. Now here, we want to talk about intersecting cell. So Sheila Dawn, March. So that would be Sheila Dawn, March. So I'd like to, whoops. Sheila Dawn, March. So I want that 82,000. Well, this one is just AND function because I'm comparing the column headers to whatever's in cell B4 and the row headers to whatever's in cell B3. So let's build it down here. Equals AND is the column header. And this whole column here is going to need to look at January. So I hit F4 twice, lock the row but not the column. Now because the B is not locked, when we copy it over here, the dancing ants will move to February. Are you equal to March? And lock it in all directions with the F4. That's logical test 1. Logical test 2. I say, oh, the column header. And that needs to be locked 1, 2, 3 times with the F4 key. So when we move this way, it's locked on Fred. But when we copy down, the 7 will move to 8 and move to Sue. Are you equal to the name up here? F4. Close parentheses. Control-Enter. Copy it over and down. And let's check that out. Look at the one little lone true right there. If I were to change this to May, instantly now it gets Sheila Dawn May. So now we simply have our patterns of true and falses. We copy the upper left formula, Control-C in edit mode, highlight, Alt-HLN, arrow, 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 tab, Control-V. All right, this is so cool. Look at this, February. Whoa, it jumped right over there. For Sue, boom. That is beautiful. Conditionally formatting an intersecting cell. Now this one was relatively easy for if we know the AND function and mixed cell references, right? We can get a little bit more difficult because sometimes, like for taxes, you don't have an exact lookup. So let's go look at an example over on CF42. Now our goal on this sheet is to type any income here and highlight the appropriate row. These are taxes. Here's our income. Here's our number of allowances. So 4,500. If we were doing approximate VLOOKUP, we'd look this up. It'd erase down this column, bump into the first number bigger, jump back one, and then go and get something. But here we're going to do something really strange. We're actually going to VLOOKUP this number and retrieve the item from the first column, because we cannot do an exact match. We can't say, is this equal to one of these row headers? So first we have to do VLOOKUP, retrieve the item from the first column, which would be 2750, and then use that as our row header. All right, let's see how to do this. Equals VLOOKUP. I'm looking this up. F4 in all directions, comma. And here's where the weirdness starts to happen. The lookup table is simply one column. This is one of those rare circumstances where you're looking something up and retrieving it from the same item. F4. What this means is VLOOKUP will take this, race through the first column. It bumps into the first bigger one and jumps back. Comma. Now in column index, when we say 1, it will actually look that up. That 2750 is what will be returned back to the cell. The range lookup we leave out because we're doing approximate match, and that's the default. And this is going to be one weird formula. Control Enter. Every single cell will get the same number. Now what's so beautiful about that? Because now we can F2 and say, are you equal to the very first one? Because remember, I'm building my conditional formatting in that top left cell, the active cell. And so I have to compare it to this row header. And what do I need to do? Lock it. F4, 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 lock the column, but not the row. So every single cell here will be asking, is that 275 equal to 0? Falses all the way. Is it equal to 500? Falses. But when it gets down here, it'll all be trues. Ready? To populate the formula in the active cell, I hold Control and Enter. That is wild. Look at that. Every single cell got the VLOOKUP looking up that 275, but now that A10 with the A locked only is looking at that row header. Now I can copy this, Control C, escape, Alt HLN, arrow, 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 tab, Control V. Format cells. This one's so special, I'm going to do something different. Hey, look at that. I'm going to go font color white and dark blue. You got to be kidding me. Now watch this. When I put my income of 650, instantly the whole correct row is selected. Control Z. Now on this next sheet 43, we want to do conditionally format the row and the column and the intersecting cell. CF43. All right, here we're going to conditionally format the row, the column, and the intersecting cell. Now, the hard part is the row, right? Because we have approximate match. I'm going to build the formula down here and repeat what we just did. Equals VLOOKUP. I'm looking up this, F4, comma, within. That range right there, F4, and that weird comma, column 1. Don't need the fourth argument, close parentheses. Are you equal to the row header? Active cell, first row header. Now I need to F4 1, 2, 3 times, lock the column but not the row. Control Enter. That formula will work for the row. F2 will come back and use that formula and put it into our dialog box. But right now we're going to build the formula for the intersecting cell. Notice for intersecting cell, we have to get a true right there, but we also have to get a true from the column header too. So this VLOOKUP is one logical test. We need a second logical test if we're doing an intersection, so we use AND. OK, logical one's already done. I click at the end, comma, and logical 2. Well, this one's not so hard. Active cell, I click on the column header, F4, 1, 2, lock the row but not the column, are you equal to the allowances in cell B4? F4 to lock it. There's our two logical tests. Close parentheses, Control Enter to populate that formula into all the cells, and there you go. There's our true. If I change this to 5, instantly there's the true. Control Z. Now I'm going to copy from the upper left corner, Control C, escape, highlight, Alt HLN, arrow, 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 tab, Control V. Format, and I'm going to format this red. The intersection is going to be fill red and font white. For the row and column, we'll do orange and yellow, because orange and yellow make red. So at the very intersecting cell, boom, it'll be red. Now if I change this to 5, I love that. Look, we're doing exact match from the column header and approximate match from the row header. If I change this to 250, instantly I get tax of 0. I like that. Control Z, Z. All right, now let's go. There's one conditional formatting. We're going to pile 2 more. And in fact, if you highlight this and Alt-OD to go to the Manage Rules, there's one. We're actually going to add a second and a third one. All right, well, this one's going to be easy. I'm going to go steal. See the logical 1 argument screen tip? I'm going to click it. Highlights that argument. Control C, escape, highlight, Alt HLN, arrow, 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 tab, Control V. Whoops, I forgot the equal sign. Equal sign. Click OK, and this is going to be orange fill. Click OK, click OK. Oh, look at that. As you add conditional formatting, it's piling on top. No problem. Alt-OD to get to our Manage Rules. Once you have a bunch of rules, there's a couple new things you can do. You can push things up and down. We want to push the orange down to have it come second. We definitely want the red on top. We're not going to use this stop if true in any of our examples in this video. But if you wanted to just stop if this first condition was met, you could check that. All right, so 1, 2. Click OK, and sure enough, now the red's on top of the orange. All right, the last one, Alt-HLN, arrow, 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 tab. This one is simply, is the row header, F4 to lock the number but not the column. Are you equal to this particular person's allowances? Format, and I'm going to do yellow. Click OK, click OK. Oh, wait a second. That's not going to work. Alt-OD. No problem. I'm going to push this one down. Either one of these will be fine in any order below the red because the red's on top. Click OK. That is beautiful. And watch this magic. 5, no problem. Tax is 15. Income of $956, no problem. The tax of $1. Control Z, Z. We used 3 different conditional formattings. The row, the column, the intersecting cell. We saw how to move conditional formatting up and down in the Manage Rules dialog box. Let's go look at our next example, 44 to 45. Now, on this sheet, we want to see something spectacular. This is called a Gantt chart. We have some days at the top, and we simply want to enter a project, the start date, 1/2/14, how many days, and when I hit Tab, I want it to show me the end date for the project and conditionally formatting green the work days, and red's going to show up as a weekend or a holiday. So if I change this to 3, Tab, instantly I have green, 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 red because that's a Sunday, green, that means we're going to work. All right, I'm going to delete this right here. Delete the formulas. Now we're going to start with our end date, and we're going to use the workday function. Now Workday International is the one we want. This function came in 2010. You simply give it a start date, comma, the number of the days. what the weekends are, and check this out. This new .international function that came in 2010 has all sorts of alternative weekends, not just Saturday and Sunday. Our weekends are on Sunday, so I double-click this 11. That's the weekend, comma. Holidays, you can either select a single cell or a whole range, F4. That way, it'll know to skip over Sundays and this particular holiday. That means it will go from this serial number to the end serial number. That is absolutely spectacular. Now, I don't want this to show up, so I want to put an if function. And I'm going to say if, and I'm going to use count a. Count a counts non-empty cells. And I'm going to highlight the 3 relative cell references. I'm going to say when you are equal to 3, that means all 3 bits of data have been entered. Then the value, if true, is the workday.international. Otherwise, null text string, double quote, that tells the formula to show nothing. Close parentheses, Control Enter, double click and send it down. That way, if I enter something here, the date here, it instantly will give me the date. Control Z a bunch. Now, how are we going to add conditional formatting? Well, guess what? Each intersecting cell has to compare the start and the end date to the column header. This is and, A-N-D. We're doing between. The column header date has to be between the start date and the end date. Notice these are at the head of the row. These cell references will have column locked. This cell reference will have row locked. All right, so I'm going to come down here and just try this. Equals and. I'm going to say column header and lock it F4, F4, row lock, but not the column. That means when it moves down, every cell will look at this Monday, but when it copies over, it'll move to Tuesday and then Wednesday. Are you greater than or equal to the start date? And that's got to be locked. As we go this way, it's got to be locked, but when we copy it down, it's got to move to the next one. So F4, lock the column, but not the row. That's the first logical test. The second logical test, hey, is the Monday, lock the row with the F4 key, are you less than or equal to the end date? And this one's got to be locked on the column. Close parentheses, Control Enter, copy it down, copy it over. We can very clearly see this last row is a problem. It is looking at these cells right here. We need a third logical test. And I'm going to pick, is this a number? Because look, this is either getting text or it's calculating the workday, which is a date. So I'm going to add a third condition, comma. The third condition is number. It's saying whatever's in this cell, and I got to lock the column, but not the row. Are you a number? Close parentheses. That'll be our third test. 1, 2, 3. Between date and has the number been entered in the end date column? Control Enter. Copy it over and copy it down. There you go. We eliminated all those. Now, that's our first condition for green. So in the active cell, I'm going to copy, Control-C, Escape. Now come over here, Alt-H-L-N, arrow, 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 Tab, Control-V. And I'm picking some green. Click OK. That's pretty cool. And let's test this. I love testing this. It's like Christmas. And 4. All right, so that's working there. Control-Z-Z a bunch. Now we need to do the red thing, because look, that's a holiday. And really what we did is this picks the actual end date, but there may be some days in between these that are holidays or weekends. All right, so we're going to look at the networkdays.international. Whoops. So this one is similar to workdays we looked at up here. This is the earlier version that only did Saturday and Sunday, but since Excel 2010, we have these international functions, which are absolutely awesome. Now here's a little trickery. Normally this counts the number of days, whereas workday.international gave us a serial number. This actually counts between 2 dates. Watch this. I'm going to totally trick this. I'm going to say column header, F4 to lock the row but not the column. That's the start date. And the end date's going to be the exact same date. That means the biggest possible count this can ever get is 1. It gets 1 or 0. Hey, that'll be perfect for true or false. Now we simply give it the 11 for Sunday. Notice that's the same as the workday function we just did up there, comma, and the holiday. F4 to lock it in all directions. Close parentheses, Control Enter. All this is going to do is say 1 when it's not a weekend or a holiday. The 0 is really what we want. Well, we need that 0 to become either a 1 or a true. So check this out. F2, there's the not, N-O-T function. And all not does is it converts a true to false and a false to true. Not will follow the rules of and or and if and conditional formatting. If it sees 0, that's false. Any non-zero number will come out as true. So we've converted because we're interested in the zeros. We want the 0 to add conditional formatting of red for weekend, but the 0 won't do it. Not will convert it. Control Enter to populate that formula all the way through, and look at that. Now there's one problem with this. It's doing the whole column, and you can see there's 3 cells I don't want. So I'm going to have to add, that's 1. That's saying it is a weekend. I have to add all 3 conditions. So I'm going to scoop this out of here, Control C, Escape. Come down here, and that logical test, that's just that 1, comma, logical test 2 will run it when I Control V, 1, 2, 3, and 4. I come to the end, close parentheses, Control Enter. And that is the wild formula that will give us 2 trues for it's a weekend there. Another true right over here for that one. That is amazing. I could never have built this just from scratch. This is one where you have to build it in multiple steps. But once you paste it all together, top left cell, Control C in edit mode, Escape, highlight, Alt HLN, arrow, 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 tab, Control V, and I'm going to apply red. That is totally spectacular. This is a project. I'm going 5 days. Instantly, it tells me the end date. And there's our beautiful conditional formatting. Green for it's a workday. Red for it is a weekend or holiday. Now, one thing we might want to fix here is that says 5 and there's 6 days. So what the weekday function has done is added 5 days. If it's really total 5 days, then we can simply come to our workday.international, which is a serial number, and subtract 1. Control Enter. So now each one of these green cells, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, corresponds to exactly the length of the project. All right, we have a couple more amazing conditional formatting tricks. Let's go over to CF46. And on CF46, we want to see how to conditionally format duplicates. Now, there's 2 ways, the built-in method and the formula method. Hey, let's just highlight, and we can see there's some dupes, Joe, Joe, Gigi, Gigi. Go up to conditional formatting, highlight cell rules, and down at the bottom, duplicates. Click OK. The problem with the built-in method is it will highlight all of the duplicates. And sometimes you only want subsequent duplicates to be highlighted. So not the first Joe, just Joe the second time, third time, fourth time. All right, so I'm going to come over here to the cell and build a formula. We're going to use COUNTIF function. Now check this out. We're going to say range is C6 colon C6, and the criteria will be C6 also. Now, that's totally strange. Right now, it would just count 1 because the criteria is Joe. But watch. Expandable range. So the first C6, I'll hit the F4 key twice, lock the 6, but not the second 6. Control Enter, copy it down. That means that this blue range will be expanding. So it counts 1 for Joe, but when it encounters the second one, since it's a relative cell reference, that C9, it gets a count of 2. Same with Gigi and Smitty. Now we can amend this because what we're interested in is formatting 2, 3, 4, 5. So I could say anytime the answer from COUNTIF is greater than 1. Control Enter, double click and send it down. That formula, true, 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 will format duplicates only after they occur for the first time. In the top cell, Control C in edit mode, escape, highlight, Alt HLN, arrow, 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 tab, Control V. And we can format it however we'd like. Click OK, click OK. That is totally amazing. Now let's go to our next sheet, CF47. And we got to talk about comparing lists. I would like to highlight the items in list 2 that are not in list 1. Now we've done comparing two lists many times in this class. We know it's the match function. We're going to say, hey, look up the item in list 2, comma, over in list 1. F4 to lock it, comma 0, because they may not be sorted. Control Enter, and copy this down. Now we're really interested in the NAs. So in order to get NA to a true to conditionally format, because Timmy's not in list 1, F2, we simply wrap is NA. We saw this back when we studied lookup functions. I'm going to populate this formula into all the cells, Control Enter. That formula will work. True, that means Kim is not in list 1. So in the top cell, I copy it in edit mode, Control C, highlight, Alt HLN, arrow, 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 tab, Control V. And format it however you'd like. Click OK, click OK. That is amazing. Conditionally format the items in list 2 that are not in list 1. Now the formula is a little bit easier if we go over to CF48. I want to find out when the item in list 2 is also in list 1. Here we just have to run match and ask the question, is the item over in list 1 F4, comma 0? Control Enter. Any non-zero number will be true. NAs will be ignored. Control C from edit mode, highlight, Alt HLN, arrow, 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 tab, Control V. Format it however you'd like. And just like that, this is Gigi is in both list 2 and list 1. Now let's go over to CF9. Hey, this is our stock example. I just want to highlight the whole row when the profit is less than 0. Alt HLN, arrow, 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 tab. And I'm going to build this right in the cell. Profit, 1, 2 on the F4 key. Lock the column but not the row. Are you less than 0? Format it. Click OK, click OK. So now if price today on GE goes down to 21, instantly that is conditionally formatted. Control Z. Let's go over to CF50, and this is a cool one. We have this huge product list, and we want to conditionally format the product word or text when there's nothing entered into this row. Well, guess what? We can use count a. Now, I'm going to assume that text or numbers could be entered in here, so we use count a. Count a counts not empty cells. And when all the cells are empty, count a will return a 0. I'm going to highlight, Alt HLN, bunch of arrows, tab. Active cell right here. Remember, each one of these products needs to look at the row. So I'm going to go equals count a and highlight relative cell references. The whole row, F4, 1, 2, 3 times, close parentheses. Now that will deliver a 0 for the row that doesn't have anything. And I really want to convert that 0 to a true, so we're going to use not. And that formula will work. Format, and whatever formatting you want, click OK, click OK. That is totally cool. As soon as I enter anything into the row for this product, now it doesn't have the formatting, Control Z. All right, let's go to CF51, our last example. We just want to look at the fact that conditional formatting, if I want to highlight this and use the dialog box, it can handle array formulas no problem. So here I want to find the max for the given city. So equals max. Well, there's no max if, so we just put if inside of the max. The logical test, we want to generate a bunch of trues and falses. So we say anything in the city column. F4, are you equal to whatever's in cell E4? F4 to lock it. If we get a true, then in the value of true, we want to dump the numbers into the max function. F4. I close this off. I'm going to highlight this in F9. And watch what happens when I F9. That if function has filtered out all of the values, and only the values for the city Berkeley are going to be dumped into the max. Control Z. Now this formula is an array formula. There's an array calculation inside the logical test. That means logical test expecting a single true or false. F9, I'm dumping a bunch of true or falses into that logical test. That means we're making an array operation. Control Z. Logical test cannot handle that array operation unless you use the special keystrokes Control Shift Enter. Now watch this. Close parentheses. If I hit Enter, value error means you forgot to use the special keystroke. We have to tell the if to make this special array formula calculation. So watch this. Control Shift and Enter. Now it works. Immediately look up to the formula bar. You see those curly brackets? That's Excel telling you it understood that this should be an array calculation. Now watch this. I'm going to highlight this in Edit Mode, Control C. Remember, it's only going to deliver that number. Escape. I'm going to highlight this, and our formula is going to be an and. We're going to say, is the city equal to Berkeley, or whatever city's in E4, and is the sales number equal to the max for that city? So you ready? In the active cell, Alt-HLN, arrow, 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 tab, equals and I'm going to start with, is this city right here, F4, F4, lock the column and not the row, equal to whatever's in E4, and Control V, and I accidentally copied the equal sign, is whatever the result from that array formula, are you equal to the sales? And I'm going to hit F4, F4. Lock the column and not the row. Close parentheses. So those two things are sitting inside of the and. Format, yellow, click OK, and click OK. Now, if I change this to Seattle, instantly that whole row and the max for Seattle is selected. If I select Oakland, boom. That is pretty amazing. Hey, that was 51 examples, plus a bunch of other cool stuff about conditional formatting. All right, we'll see you next video.